Hello, everyone, and welcome to UpKeep Onboarding. My name is Renee, and I am an implementation and product expert here at UpKeep. And my goal is really just to walk you through these important onboarding steps so that you have a clear direction on how to set up UpKeep for the first time. And so for our agenda today, we will be discussing the different users in the system, just giving a quick overview on that, locations and assets and what that pertains and how to create them, request workflow and configuration, and finally the team training resources that you have available. So moving right along, I think I missed a page. All right, there we go. So the very first thing that you need to do is establish your users in UpKeep. So whether you have a large or small maintenance team, just knowing what specific role type your user is going to need is really going to help piece together your team within UpKeep. And now, as you can see here, I listed the different users that we currently have available, and I'll just walk through each one individually. And first one we have is our admin users. These are the internal UpKeep experts, and they really just act as the main overseers of the account. So their role is to really gather clean data, monitor the team's progress, and they also have full control capabilities in the system. Admin users are able to add, edit, delete any data such as work orders, requests, or anything like that. And you can also have multiple admins in your account at once. And then available on our Business Plus plan, we did release a custom role user. So this is essentially going to allow you to set up the same capabilities as an admin, but you are able to customize some important permissioning. So would recommend to check that out if you are on our Business Plus plan. Then we have our limited admins users. Similar capabilities as an admin, but main difference is that they will not be able to make any changes or view the settings tab or make any changes to the configuration of the account. They are also able to view the people and teams tab or the different users in the system. They just cannot make any changes in adding users, editing or deleting, removing team members or anything like that. This is likely good for someone that is in a maintenance lead position that would essentially need to delegate work orders out to, certain team members or anything like that. They just will not be able to make any changes in the back end like an admin would. So would recommend maybe a maintenance lead for that role. Technician users, these are the users that are out in the field processing work orders that are given to them by an admin user. They are able to create their own data, such as work orders, assets, locations, and but they can only they can only edit and delete data that they themselves have created. So if an admin creates a work order for them, for example, they cannot go in and make any changes to that or delete that data since that, they did not create that. And then our limited technician user, they have the same capabilities as a regular technician would, but just the main difference is that they can only see data that you specifically assign to them. So this is perfect for someone that wants to control the scope of what, they're seeing in the system. Or doesn't want to be overwhelmed with other team members, locations, work orders, or anything like that, or maybe good for someone that has a specialty. So an electrician worker that only works on, specific work orders or specific assets, you can set them up as a limited technician and only assign, specific data for them to see. Then we have our view only user. These are the users that are not as involved with UpKeep, but still want to see the most in the back end like an admin would. And they also have the ability to pull out reports. So in the event that they just want to see what's going on in the day-to-day, would recommend this user to someone that's possibly in management. They also are not able to make any changes. As the name implies, they are a view-only user, and but they do have the option to submit work order requests for approval. So that is an option there as well. And then we have our requester user. This is usually someone that is outside of the maintenance team. Their sole purpose is just to submit work order requests and view the status of them. So an example of this case would be maybe a tenant needing fixing in their apartment. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is log into the web application and just show you a few ways that you can add your users in the system. So Once you log into UpKeep for the first time, you will be taken to the work orders tab. But what we'll do is click on the people and teams tab right here on the left-hand side. And once that opens up, sorry, my internet's a tiny bit slow today. But once that opens up, you'll be able to see the user list here. This is the current team that I have set up in my account. But you'll click on that top right blue button. And then from here, you can select the role type. So in this case, the different users are all listed here. And as you notice in the first four, there's a little yellow price tag. This just indicates that it is a paid license, so you would need an available seat in order to invite this user. And then the view only and requester, these are free licenses, so you can have as many of these in the account as you would like. But in the event you were to invite a view only user, you would select the user type again. You can include their email address here. And just include their email address here. You can click enter. And by doing it this way manually, you can add up to 20 email addresses doing it this way. But once you invite them, what's going to happen is that they are going to be receiving an email notification with a blue link asking them to pretty much set up their password. And once they click on the blue link, it'll again set up their password and they'll be able to complete the registration that way. And another way that you are able to import would be to bulk import through a CSV or a spreadsheet. I would recommend if you have maybe 20 or so, you can do it manually, but if you have maybe 50 or more and you want to import in bulk, you can click on that blue import button on the top right here. I'll click that open again. And then from here, what you're going to be taken to, okay, there we go. What you're going to be taken to is the option to download a sample CSV template. The template that we do provide is a requirement in order to import any data in the system. So just keep that in mind. You'll download the sample template from there and input the data. And then once you're done with that, you'll be able to import your file in bulk. So both ways are perfectly fine, but I would recommend if you're going to do a larger import, do it through the import option. And if you're going to do a few users, definitely do it through just adding them individually one by one. All right. Now moving right along and going to go over our locations and assets. So after adding your users in the system, these two components are extremely vital because this is essentially the building blocks to your workflow. So everyone's UpKeep setup, data, and use cases are going to be different just depending on everyone's industries, but just a common denominator that we've noticed in a lot of our successful customers is that they have a detailed and consistent location and asset setup. So let's take a look at our locations first. These are pretty much the foundations within UpKeep. This really tells your team where they need to go to complete their work. And as you can see here, it is also broken down into two different hierarchy levels, primary and sublocation. So our primary are the main building, plants, schools, facilities, anything like that. Whereas these sublocations are smaller sections of that main building, such as a room, a floor, a zone. And a primary and sub-association is not always necessary for some users. It really just depends on how granular you want to get with the system. And if you do, this option is available to you as well. And now looking at our assets, these are essentially just any high value items such as pieces of equipment, machinery, anything that your team is going to be performing maintenance on. And just like locations, we do have a hierarchy level. We do have 4 levels of asset hierarchy, from the parent all the way down to a great grandchild asset. So you have 4 levels of asset hierarchy. The parent, an example of each would be the parent asset would be the core asset. So a hydro power station. Child asset would be a component of that hydropower station. So the power station itself. Grandchild, another component, and then it just keeps going deeper and deeper. So essentially what this will allow us to do is create work orders specifically for the individual components of the asset, since individually these can break down separately and costs can be different, versus the power station versus the main transformer, for example. You don't have to use the full 4 levels of asset hierarchy, but this is an available option to you as well. And just an additional value items is that through assets, you also have the opportunity to download QR codes for your pretty much set up asset tags, which will allow you to easily scan your asset information and pull up the asset details, any cost pertaining to that asset, any work orders, any files, any parts that are linked to that asset. It'll just allow you to pull that information up from the palm of your hand. So you can do that through your mobile device. And through our Business Plus plan, you also have advanced asset tracking, which is our asset downtime and depreciation, and also warranty tracking as well. Now going into naming convention. So it is also important to note that when you are establishing your account, also establishing an organized naming convention for your assets and location is really going to help your team find data so much easier, so much easier, and also makes reporting much more concise. So if you see the example that I've shown below, notice how I have multiple welder assets in my Carlsbad location here. And if I have the same name, so they're all different welders, but just looking at the name, you don't know which individual welder item this is for. And if you look to the right, I do have an organized naming convention that helped me set up which exact welder that I need. Really just saves a lot of time searching and scrolling. But with that being said, I do want to put this all into practice just to show you how this looks like on the web application and how to pretty much find this information through your mobile device as well. And a good tip before we go into the web app is to create your locations first before your assets. This is generally the way to go, since most of the time your assets or any data is going to be linked to a location anyways. So just creating your locations first is going to help in the long run. So it just saves time. But perfect. Now let's go into our locations tab here. I did click open our locations tab here. And since again, would recommend creating your locations prior to creating any other data in the system. That way you can tie your assets or any other piece of data to your location. So also going back to the naming convention, as you can see, I have an organized naming convention since I have a few different restaurants in Arizona. So I have a few different restaurants in Arizona. So what I did was just labeled it differently based off of the city and state. And that way it's just organized. And I cannot talk. And in each individual location, I did also create a few different sublocations. If you see to the far right, there's a little number 4 icon that just indicates the different sublocations that are available in that primary location. And I did also, keep a consistent naming convention as well. So for the Bob's Burger Goodyear, Arizona location, I do have a few sublocations. So Goodyear, Arizona, back of house, front of house, kitchen. And since I have the same type of location and sublocations at the different restaurants, I did also separate that by the naming convention as well. That way, for granularity reasons, reporting, and so that ease of use, people know exactly where to go and at what location. So whenever creating a work order and assigning that out. And if you saw that I expanded these sublocations, another way to add a sublocation would be just to click on this add sublocation button as well. You can easily add that there and it'll automatically include the primary location as its primary location. But similar to the user and people in teams adding users option, you'll be able to click on the blue button on the very top right and then include a different name. So I do have my Bob's Burgers plant in Santa Monica. I cannot spell Bob's Burgers. So I'm just going to keep that same naming convention consistent, and then Again, Bob's Burgers, the city, and then the state. And then I can include the address. If I was creating a sub-location, I can include the parent location as well. Those limited technician users, you can include the worker in there as well, any team members, vendor, any data, or for granularity purposes, you can include that information as well. I will just go ahead and create this just to show you how that looks like. And as you can see here, it's all consistent and I know exactly which one it is. And if I needed to, I can do that little drop down and add a sub-location, or I can add this here as well. Similar to user and people and teams, you are able to bulk import by clicking on these three dots, click on import here. And then you can download the template, or you can import live as well. So you can start the import process and then just make sure that that naming convention is consistent. And yeah, it would recommend to do this if you have a large sum of locations that you want to include. And I am going to go now to our assets tab. Wait for that to load. And generally the same, naming convention. I have a consistent throughout my asset information as well as my primary locations. So I have my Goodyear, Arizona, assets individually categorized and labeled correctly. So Goodyear is the abbreviation, obviously, of the city. Then I have Arizona, the state, and then I have the actual name of the piece of equipment that I'll essentially be performing maintenance on. And I can click this open just to view the asset details. You can see any work orders that are associated with it, the details of the individual piece of equipment. Wait for that to load. Give that a moment or so. So sorry. Okay, there we go. You can see the name, the model, category, barcode, any of that information as well. Based off of the additional data that you input, you can include purchase price, depreciation, and all of just additional information that would make including that in the asset details would be recommended. And then if you see to the far right, I have the image of the particular piece of equipment. You can include that as well. And the hierarchy level, again, we have 4 levels of asset hierarchy. So I have this asset, which is my parent asset, and then one child asset associated with it, and then the actual location for that. You could also see the parts that are associated to this particular asset as well, any files that are needed. I did include a manual, so you can include that as well via PDF, any meters information, but you will be able to pretty much see all of the data that is associated to the asset on the asset tab. And then if you see to the far right, you also have a QR code option. I did include a barcode. And as I mentioned before, we do have the option to easily scan a QR code so that you can pull up all of this information from the palm of your hand again using our UpKeep mobile app. So perfect. I'm also going to show you how that looks like through the mobile app. So in the event I did open up the mobile app here, I have an iPad, so it may look a little bit differently just visibility wise. But through the mobile app, what I'll do is go to the more option on the bottom right. And then from here, you can go to the locations tab, see all the different locations, and then, expand through the sub locations as well. And if I needed to, I can include or create a new, pretty much a new location as well here, or include a new asset as well. I'm going to go back. And just again, I clicked on more, and then I clicked on assets. I can go into, the individual assets and see all of that information as well. So again, I mentioned that you have the option to scan a QR code, as I mentioned, for this individual asset. On the top right, there's a little barcode option or icon. I'm going to click on that and wait for this to open. I click on that and let's do this and scan my QR code. And what that'll do is bring up that asset, and you'll be able to, again, see all of that information, the details, files, parts, and all of that. You'll be able to pull that up easily from the touch of pretty much your finger. So that is an option as well. And again, you can search up any assets, you can sort, you can click them open if needed, but that is an option too. If you need to view the asset information from your phone, or you can again create those one-off if needed as well. But perfect. Now going back to the now that we've covered assets, locations, and how to set them up both on the web app and on the mobile app, let's actually talk about request workflow and configuration. So the main component of UpKeep, why is that blank? The main component of UpKeep is in our work order. So everything that we discussed in and adding users, our locations, assets, all of that will really come together here, you know, depending on the workflow. But one main thing that I'll cover today is the requester workflow. So to demonstrate this, what I'll do is go through the life cycle of how a work order request is created by a technician on the mobile app and how it's later approved and turned into a work order by an admin. So I'm going to go into the mobile app again, open this up. And let's say you're just opening up the app for the first time. What I'll do is in that, you know, that plus button in the bottom, I'll be able to open that up. And then from here, I'll click on request. And from here, what I'll do is just say that the fryer is busted. I can include a description, priority level. I can include an image. I can take a picture easily. I'll take this picture. And I can use this photo. By using this photo, you can also adjust or draw on the actual item. And I can go here, I can change the color as well. You can go like that, and just so that you can include, you know, where specifically you need assistance on. I can add the worker, the location, the asset, but again, you see that little barcode icon as well. It's not just from the asset tab, but you also have the option to scan it from here. So I'm going to click on the little asset barcode icon. Open that up, and that instantly scanned the piece of equipment. And what it did is uploaded the piece of equipment and assigned that to the work order as well as the location associated with it. Then you can include a due date, all of that information, but from there, I'll just go ahead and submit that. And then the request is created. And then from the admin's end, what will happen is they will receive an email notification just letting them know that a request has been submitted for approval. And then they'll be able to go to the request tab here. This badge icon will indicate the number of requests. I think I just did it a little too fast. That's why my third request is not populating. We'll just give that a few seconds or so. But now you can see that the fryer is busted. I can click open the request that was submitted. Just take a look at the request details, see what's going on. I've noticed that, you know, the description, there's no description. If the fryer is busted, that's going to really slow down our, you know, the number of orders or items that we can sell for the day. So instead of this being a low priority, I would recommend this being a high. So I changed the priority level. I can click open the picture that was taken as well. See the location. I'll put damage as the category. I can actually specifically assign this to a worker, whoever's going to be in charge of this. I'll include a due date. We need this done by tomorrow at 5 a.m. For example, we can assign that out, include a due date, include custom form items or checklists or anything like that if you want to include that. Add parts if needed. You can include a file if you think that if you have like maybe another manual or want to include something in there as well. You can also toggle on require signature if you want the technician to get a signature before closing out the actual work order. But let's say if this particular request didn't have enough information or it's a duplicate request and we wanted to decline it, we do have the option to decline the request and include the request, the reason why you're declining that request. So maybe it's a duplicate request, you can include that there. But what it'll do is also notify the requester that submitted that that request, the reason why. But in this case, what I'll do is go ahead and approve that. Wait for that to load. Right, and what it did is you saw that confirmation on the top right hand side, and it turned into a work order. So from there, the work order is created, the technician gets notified, and you'll be able to see the details and see that it's now assigned. So this is exactly what the technician will be able to see. The details, the priority, the last update, the due date, damage, category, all of that information. They can open up the image again if needed. And the asset information, they can pretty much toggle this on so that they can start processing the work order. But you as the admin also have the option to reach out to them or communicate through the individual work order. So from here, what I will do, I went to the update section, and then I can @mention Tina. So similar to social media, I can @mention Tina and just say, would need this done ASAP. And you can send that out. Tina will receive an email and push notification if they have their mobile device turned on and have that as well. And they'll be able to correspond back and forth through that particular through that particular work order. And another important part about work order requests is that as an admin, you also have the ability to control what fields are actually being shown. So I'm going to go back to the request tab here. And if you see to the far right, there's an edit request form option. So from here, you can see that all of the permissions allow requesters to set an asset is optional right now. Right, but in the event that we need certain fields required, we need to always know where the location of the request is being held. Since we have different restaurants, we need to know exactly where they need to go. So we can require certain fields, maybe just make it required for the category, or even hide certain data. Everything else, we want to set the due date, we want to assign the worker, and all of that. We can include that as well. And you also are able to include custom form items as well. And let's say, for example, you need their store number, and specifically that's not included in the location. You need a store number, any code or anything like that. You can include a custom form item so that they can include that in the request that is being submitted. You can make this required or not. And then from here, you'll save the changes. And what I'll do is show you the difference and how that looks like. So going back to the mobile app, I'm going to click on that plus button, click on request. And then you can now see that the location is a required field. The asset is not a required field. Category is required, and then that store number is also a required field, so that they need to essentially create all of that data. Right. So now I'll go over the team training resources that we provide for additional guidance in case you need any help or anything like that. We do have an all-star support team that you can reach out to via email, phone, or even live chat. So just be sure to reach out to them if you have any questions or need any assistance with troubleshooting, or just want to learn a specific feature. We do have a dedicated help center that our amazing support team again created, just for a simple how-to guides if you feel better looking at those. And then we do also include and have tutorial videos as well. And that wraps up this presentation. And if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to our support team, and we'd be happy to help. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.